Hello everybody and welcome back to Historical-ish. We are kicking off the Ancient Mysteries Iceberg Volume 3. Now, we have been working on some longer form content that we should be putting out in the next couple of weeks, so definitely be on the lookout for that. But I did want to provide something that would be more of an ongoing series throughout and in between some of those longer form individual videos. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Number 1, Archimedes War Machines. Now, Archimedes of Syracuse was a Greek mathematician, physicist, engineer, and astronomer who is known for his contributions to mathematics and science. He's also extremely well known for his ingenious design of war machines during the Second Punic War, specifically when the Roman Republic besieged his home city of Syracuse. So just to give a brief historical context, the Second Punic War was fought between 218 and 201 BC and was a significant conflict between the Roman Republic and Carthage. Now, Archimedes lived in Syracuse, which was a city-state in Sicily that became a battleground due to its strategic importance in the region. When Romans laid siege to Syracuse around 214 to 212 BC, Archimedes was called upon to use his knowledge to defend the city. Archimedes designed several war machines to defend Syracuse, leveraging his understanding of physics and mechanics. Some of the most famous include the Claw of Archimedes, or the Iron Hand. This was a crane-like device with a grappling hook that could lift and capsize enemy ships approaching the city walls. It operated from the walls and was reportedly effective at disrupting the Roman naval assault. There's also heat rays, which Archimedes is said to have devised a system of mirrors or polished shields to focus sunlight onto approaching ships, setting them on fire. You might have seen this in the show Mythbusters, and due to it being on Mythbusters, the existence of such a device remains a topic of debate. And if you haven't seen that episode, definitely check it out. He also had his catapults, which he improved the design of normal catapults, which increased their range and accuracy. And there's also Archimedes' screw, which was a device for raising water and not necessarily a war machine, though it is worth noting as an example of his mechanical ingenuity. And there's also some speculation that similar principles could have been applied to create devices for removing water from flooded enemy ships or for other defensive purposes. So the main mystery here is definitely the effectiveness and even the existence of some of these war machines, especially the heat rays in particular. The feasibility of using mirrors or polished shields to set ships on fire has been tested with varying results in modern experiments. While some claim it's possible under ideal conditions, others argue it would have been completely impractical or ineffective given the technology of Archimedes' times. And obviously, much of what is known about Archimedes' war machines comes from later historical accounts, some of which might have been embellished or, made up some of his inventions. The primary sources are often secondhand, and the details can be vague or hyperbolic. Number 2, why did the Picts disappear? The Picts were a confederation of tribes living in what is now eastern and northern Scotland during the Late Iron Age and early medieval periods. They are known for their unique language, which has not survived in readable form, and their distinctive stone carvings. The disappearance of the Picts as a distinct group by the end of the first millennium is a topic of historical and archaeological interest, with several factors contributing to their assimilation and their fading of their distinct identity. So a little historical context, the Picts emerge in historical records in the Late Iron Age, noted for their resistance against the Roman Britain's attempts to conquer the north. They were described by Roman writers as a formidable people living in fortified communities and leading effective military campaigns. After the Roman withdrawal from Britain, the Picts continued to play a significant role in the region's history, often engaging with their neighbors, including the Gauls, Britons, and Vikings. So there are a number of factors contributing to the disappearance of the Picts. The most significant factor was the gradual merger of the Pictish kingdoms with the Gaelic kingdom of Dal Riata. The process culminated in the 9th century when Kenneth MacAlpin became king of both the Picts and the Gaels, leading to the foundation of the Kingdom of Alba, the precursor of modern Scotland. This political unification is often cited as the beginning of the end of the Picts as a separate people group. Along with political unification, there was a cultural and linguistic assimilation. The Gaelic language and culture began to dominate, leading to the gradual disappearance of the Pictish language and many aspects of their culture. By the 11th century, Gaelic had become the predominant language of the region, further erasing Pictish identity. And from the 8th century onwards, Viking raids and settlements also played a role in the transformation of Pictish society. The Norse influence altered the political and cultural landscape of northern Scotland, contributing to the complexity of Pictish disappearance. Some Pictish territories were absorbed into North Earldom of Orkney, which had its own impacts on cultural and power structures. And finally, of course, the spread of Christianity across the British Isles also played a role in the transforming Pictish society. The church played a crucial role in the unification of different groups under a common religious framework, which often accompanied the adoption of new social norms and practices that further blended the Pictish and Gaelic cultures. So the exact process and timeline of the disappearance of the Picts is a subject of debate, but we can kind of put together a rough timeline of when it happened and why it happened. We just can't be 100% certain. Number 3, the lost city of Vineta. The lost city of Vineta is one of the most enduring legends of the Baltic Sea region, often described as a prosperous and advanced civilization that mysteriously vanished beneath the waves. The myth of Vineta has been woven into the cultural and historical fabric of Northern Europe, particularly in German and Polish folklore. It's said to have been located somewhere along the coast of the Baltic Sea, with various theories suggesting locations from Denmark to Poland. The story of Vineta is a blend of historical facts, mythical elements, and archaeological interpretations, making it an interesting case of a cultural legend with potential roots in real cities or settlements. So, a little bit of historical context. The legend likely originated from the historical accounts of medieval chroniclers, who described a wealthy city that was punished for its hubris and sinfulness by being submerged by the sea. The earliest written references to Vineta come from the 12th century, and over time the story has been embellished and adapted, reflecting the cultural and historical context of those recounting it. Some historians and archaeologists speculate that the legend of Vineta could be based on actual settlements that thrived during the early Middle Ages, but were later lost due to natural disasters, warfare, or economic decline. Possible candidates include the trading emporiums of the Viking Age and the early medieval period, such as Jomsborg, believed to have been located on the islands of the Baltic Sea. Vineta did become a symbol of lost glory and a warning against the dangers of pride and decadence. It has been referenced in literature, art, and music, often embodying themes of loss, warning, and nostalgia for a golden age. So there hasn't been any definitive archaeological evidence that has been found to confirm the existence of Vineta as described in the legends, although research and excavations in the Baltic Sea region have uncovered settlements that show the area was home to advanced maritime societies. These findings do suggest that the legend could be an amalgamation of memories from several of these towns. So with all of that, the exact location and the actual town that it was is up for debate, and even several coastal cities claim to be the modern successor to Vineta. So they have to be right? Number 4, the Dendera light. The Dendera light refers to the image found in the Hathor temple at the Dendera temple complex in Egypt, which some have interpreted as depicting an ancient Egyptian light bulb. The temple itself dates back to the Ptolemaic and Roman periods, spanning the time between 305 BC and the 1st century AD. The Dendera complex, located about 2.5 kilometers southeast of Dendera, Egypt, is one of the best preserved temple sites from ancient Egypt, and was dedicated to Hathor, the goddess of love, beauty, music, and joy. The light bulb image is found in the Hathor temple, specifically in a crypt that was believed to hold precious items or serve specific ritualistic purposes. If there's ever an unknown room, it's either hold precious items or serve specific ritualistic purposes, and there's no other options. Some proponents of alternative history and ancient astronaut theories suggest that the relief depicts a detailed representation of an electrical light bulb. They argue that this could indicate the ancient Egyptians had access to advanced technology, possibly through lost knowledge or extraterrestrial influence. The bulbs are often described as containing a filament with a snake-like shape connected to a base or a box, which some interpret as evidence of electrical power. Although that is pretty fun to think about, the mainstream Egyptologists and archaeologists interpret these images quite differently. They argue that the images symbolically represent aspects of Egyptian mythology and the process of creation. The filament inside the bulb is interpreted as a depiction of a snake, which is a common motif in Egyptian art, symbolizing many deities or mythological concepts. The base or box is often seen as an illustration of pillars or lotus flowers, symbols of stability, strength, and creation, respectively. What is interesting about this is the crypts in Egyptian temples were not public spaces, but were reserved for priests and specific religious ceremonies. The artwork and inscriptions found in these areas are always highly symbolic, often relating to esoteric religious knowledge and practices. So given that, it's kind of hard to believe that everything else in the room is highly symbolic, while this one image in particular is very literal. Number 5, the true location of Mecca. So Mecca, located in the Hijazi region of modern-day Saudi Arabia, is universally recognized by Muslims as the birthplace of the Prophet Muhammad and the site of the Kaaba, the most sacred structure in Islam, towards which Muslims around the world face during their daily prayers. Although some researchers and authors have proposed alternative theories regarding the early Islamic community's location, suggesting that the descriptions of Mecca in Islamic texts do not match the geographical and archaeological characteristics of the modern city of Mecca. These theories often rely on interpretations of historical texts, inscriptions, and early Islamic coins to argue for a different location in the Near East. Critics of the traditional location of Mecca often argue that there is a lack of archaeological evidence from the time of the Prophet Muhammad that matches the descriptions found in Islamic texts. There are a bunch of different theories actually, so I'm just going to get into kind of the most interesting to me as well as the most popular. First one is the Petra theory. It was proposed by Dan Gibson in his book Quranic Geography, and as the name suggests, proposes that the original holy city of Islam was Petra in modern-day Jordan and not Mecca in Saudi Arabia. Gibson analyzed early mosque orientations and argued that their prayer directions points toward Petra and not Mecca. He claims this alignment changes in mosques built after the 8th century, suggesting a shift in the sacred city's location. He also suggests that depictions of the early Islamic community's surroundings in Islamic texts fit Petra better than they do Mecca, citing features like a stream, agricultural land, and the city's position in a valley. There's also the Northern Arabia or Negev desert theory. Some researchers have suggested that the early Islamic community might have been located in Northern Arabia or the Negev desert, based on the historical and geographical analysis. This one also argues the archaeological and geographical faults, but also claims that the trade routes described in Islamic traditions and the geopolitical landscape fit better with locations in Northern Arabia or the Negev areas that were more central to the trade networks of the time. And then the final one, which is just the general geographic and climatic discrepancies. A lot of people think the geography and climate just don't match up. They often don't have an actual place where it could be located. They just say that Mecca isn't Mecca, but whatever. Some argue that the historical descriptions of Mecca include features such as olive trees, fields, and abundant water sources, which do not align with the arid conditions of the Mecca region. So yeah, there are some counter-arguments like the prayer direction not being completely accurate during the time, also the change in climate from then until now, but yeah. King Vortigern. The figure of King Vortigern is primarily known through medieval chronicles and Welsh literary tradition, where he is often portrayed as a ruler of Britain who invited the Saxons to the island, setting the stage for the Anglo-Saxon conquest of much of Britain. So the historical accuracy of the king is what is the mystery here, which is often debated among historians, and a lot of them suggest that it's a blend of fact and folklore that characterizes the period following the Roman withdrawal from Britain in the early 5th century. His reign is usually placed in the mid to late 5th century, a time of significant turmoil and transition in Britain. Following the collapse of Roman authority, the island faced political fragmentation, economic decline, and the threat of invasions from various groups including Picts, Scots, and Germanic tribes. In this context, he is said to have risen to power, though the nature of his authority, whether he was a high king, a regional warlord, or something else, is entirely unclear. The most interesting aspect of the story is his supposed invitation to the Saxons, led by Hengist and Horsa, to help defend Britain against northern invaders. According to the story, the Saxons were granted land in Kent, but soon turned against Vortigern, leading to the eventual Saxon takeover of much of England. Another legend associated with him is his attempt to build a stronghold, which kept collapsing. Advised by his magicians, he sought a boy without a natural father. This boy, said to be the future wizard Merlin, prophesied the reason for the tower's instability and revealed Vortigern's fate. Gotta love my dude Merlin. Vortigern's existence is documented in various historical sources. However, these accounts were written sometime later after the events they describe and often contain a mix of history and legend. There is limited direct archaeological evidence for his reign or specific events associated with the story in general. The period is characterized more broadly by evidence of Saxon settlement and the decline of Roman-style urban life. Vortigern also appears in Welsh tradition, where his story has been interpreted in various ways, sometimes as a cautionary tale of betrayal and moral failure, which I kind of find interesting. But yeah, maybe I'll be a fake king one day. Number 7, what happened to Aksum? The Aksumite Empire, also known as Aksum, was a powerful and influential civilization that thrived in the Horn of Africa, particularly in what is now Eritrea and northern Ethiopia, from approximately the 1st century AD to the 7th century AD. It's known for its huge obelisks, advanced architecture, and its role in early Christian history. Aksum's decline is always a subject of debate, with several factors contributing to its downfall. Aksum was a major trading empire that controlled vital trade routes between the Roman Empire, and later the Byzantine Empire, and ancient India. The Aksumites were known for their naval and trading prowess, their adoption of Christianity as a state religion in the early 4th century, and their unique script. The empire was also the issuer of its own currency, a testament to its economic sophistication and autonomy. One of the primary factors in the decline of the Aksumite Empire was the shift in trade routes. With the rise of the Persian Empire and the expansion of the Islamic caliphates, many of the trade routes that had enriched Aksum were diverted. The Red Sea trade routes in particular began to bypass Aksum, leading to significant economic downturn. Environmental changes, including deforestation, soil depletion, and overgrazing, contributed to the decline in agriculture, which definitely was the backbone of the Aksumite Empire. These environmental issues were exacerbated by the empire's intensive agricultural practices and urban expansion, leading to reduced agricultural output and food shortages. The Aksumite Empire also faced internal political fragmentation and external military pressures. The expansion of Islamic caliphates in the 7th century posed a significant military threat and led to the isolation of Aksum from its trading partners. Additionally, the empire's control over its territories weakened, leading to the rise of regional powers and internal divisions. Following these pressures, there was a southward movement of the political and economic center of the region from Aksum to the more fertile and secure areas of the Ethiopian highlands. This relocation marked the transition from the Aksumite Empire to the medieval Ethiopian kingdoms, which maintained continuity with Aksumite culture and Christianity. So the decline of Aksum is documented in a limited number of contemporary sources, with archaeological evidence providing insights into the empire's economic conditions, urban planning, and environmental state. The transition from the Aksumite period to the post-Aksumite era is seen in the shift of settlement patterns, changes in architectural styles, and the continuation of Christian traditions. Number 8, City of Caesars. The City of Caesars, also known as the City of the Caesars, the City of Patagonia, or Wandering City, is a mythical city that was said to be located somewhere in the remote areas of South America, and as you guessed it, specifically in Patagonia. As with every single lost city, it's said to be filled with untold riches, and this one in particular has been part of South American folklore and legend since the time of the Spanish conquest. There have been numerous expeditions in search of the City of Caesars, although no concrete evidence of its existence has ever been found. The legend of the city emerged in the 16th and 17th centuries, a period marked by the European exploration and colonization of the Americas. It was a time when tales of El Dorado and other cities of gold fueled the imaginations of explorers and adventurers who believed that the New World held vast, undiscovered treasures. The City of Caesars was often described as a city rich in gold, silver, and diamonds hidden somewhere in the unexplored regions of Patagonia, beyond the reach of the Spanish colonial authority. The legend was likely influenced by the real experiences and exaggerated tales of European explorers who encountered the natural wonders and indigenous peoples of South America. Their accounts of these encounters were often embellished upon return to Europe, feeding the creation of this mythical city. Some theories suggest that the legend of the City of Caesars could have been influenced by indigenous stories or misconceptions about indigenous settlements, which were then interpreted by Europeans as tales of a wealthy city. It's described in various accounts as a roaming city, one that appears and disappears at different locations, making it impossible to find, which, if it's impossible to find, I'm sure as heck not going to look for it. But also, my question is, if it's impossible to find, how did somebody find it? And then how did it end up? Oh, whatever. Number 9, Emperor Jimmu. Emperor Jimmu is traditionally considered the first emperor of Japan, according to the country's mytho-historical records. His reign is marked as the beginning of the imperial line, with February 11th, 660 BC, traditionally cited as the date of his ascension to the throne. This date is celebrated in Japan as National Foundation Day, and the narratives of Emperor Jimmu are primarily derived from two ancient texts, the Kojiki and the Nihon Shoki, both of which mix mythology, folklore, and historical events. Emperor Jimmu is described as a direct descendant of the sun goddess Amaterasu, Hira-Masu, which imbues the Japanese imperial lineage with a divine quality. According to legend, Jimmu, originally named Kamuyamato Iwarebiko, embarked from the region of Takachiho in the southern part of Kyushu, leading his people eastward in the quest to conquer new lands. This journey, often described as an expedition or a divine mission, ended in the Yamato region, which would become the center of Japanese civilization. As a descendant of Amaterasu, Jimmu's divine lineage established the sacred nature of the Japanese imperial family. Jimmu's journey from Kyushu to the Yamato plain is a foundational myth of Japan, symbolizing the unification and consolidation of the islands under a central authority. The narrative includes battles against native tribes, showcasing Jimmu as a warrior king who overcame opposition to establish his kingdom. So, with all that being said, the historicity of Emperor Jimmu and the events described in the Kojiki and the Nihon Shoki are obviously debated among scholars. Some view these accounts as purely mythical, while others believe they contain kernels of historical truth, possibly embellished over the generations. Archaeological evidence from the Yayoi and Kofun periods provides insight into the societies that existed in Japan around the time of Jimmu is said to have lived, but there is no direct evidence linking these to a historical figure that could be conclusively identified as Jimmu. So yeah, the distinction between mythological and historical elements in Jimmu's story is blurred. While there may have been a chieftain or leader around whom these legends coalesced, identifying any such figure as Jimmu is obviously challenging because of how far back in history it happened and with how little concrete historical evidence we have. But that isn't to say that Emperor Jimmu's story played a crucial role in the ideological and symbolic construction of Japanese identity and the divine legitimacy of the imperial line. So that is an important aspect of it. And finally, number 10, the various relics of the Prophet Muhammad. So in general, relics attributed to the Prophet Muhammad hold immense significance in Islamic tradition, embodying a deep spiritual connection to the founder of Islam itself. This isn't the first religion to claim to have ancient relics, but these relics in particular range from personal items reportedly belonging to the Prophet, such as hairs from his beard, to articles associated with his life events, like pieces of his cloak, or footprint impressions. The reverence for these items stems from a desire among Muslims to feel closer connection to Muhammad's life and teachings. Over the centuries, these relics have been preserved, venerated, and sometimes enshrined in various locations across the Muslim world. So I'm just going to go through the various relics of the Prophet Muhammad. There's the Holy Mantle, which is believed to be a cloak that belonged to the Prophet Muhammad and kept in a mosque in Istanbul, Turkey. It was gifted to the Ottoman sultans in the 16th century and has since been a revered object of veneration during the month of Ramadan. Then there's Prophet's hair. Strands of hair purported to be from the beard of the Prophet Muhammad are among the most widespread relics. They're housed in various locations, including in Kashmir and in Turkey. There's also the Seal of Prophethood, a physical mark believed to have been on the Prophet's back, signifying his status as the final prophet in Islam. While the seal itself is not a tangible relic that can be preserved, its description and significance are widely commemorated in Islamic tradition. There's the Prophet's footprint. Impressions said to be the footprints of Muhammad are preserved in several places, and these footprints are believed to provide blessings. There's also a tooth. In general, the authenticity of these relics obviously is debated, along not only with the Islamic relics, but all the religions. And I guess there's no real way to prove that it's not. So I guess that's what the mystery is. Cool. Well, that wraps up Ancient Mysteries Volume 3, Episode 1. I'll continue to put these out periodically in between some of the longer ones that we have in the works. So definitely be on the lookout for those, and definitely be on the lookout for Ancient Mysteries Volume 3 in the coming weeks. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate everyone. I also appreciate my patrons. It is awesome being supported for making content that I enjoy making and you enjoy listening to. So thank you to Jacob Ziegler, Dr. Swag, Dhruv Singhal, Dates and Dead Guys, Jag, and of course, Bean Fart and Ganja Girl. But anyways, that about wraps it up. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next episode.